Hi Internet, welcome to the Greg Troyan YouTube channel, and welcome to Greg's 14 Adventures, a weekly vlog where I discuss my journey through Final Fantasy XIV as a first-time player. I beat A Realm Reborn back in 2022, and I'm finally finishing up the rest of the game. These vlogs are documenting my journey. If you like these videos and want to support their continued production, the best way to do that is to like the video, share it on a relevant social media site like Reddit, and leave a comment. Thanks, pal. Alright, so I am super excited about this week's vlog because it is my first ever Final Fantasy Q&A for the channel. So I decided what would be a good fun thing to do for this week was, since I'm in between expansions and busy working on a video essay for the channel, I thought it'd be cool if I did a little Q&A with the audience as sort of a wrap-up of Heavensward, and to, gather my thoughts as to where we're at currently in the 14 journey, and also to make this more of an interactive thing. The reason I'm doing these vlogs is because I like talking with people about Final Fantasy XIV. I like sharing my experience with the community. I think because 14 is such a massive game that so many people have played and have such individual experiences with, I find it to be really, really engaging to talk back and forth with people about 14. Even more so than a lot of other Final Fantasy games. Like, the Beatles are my favorite band, but they're not my favorite band to talk about. I find that Kiss is a much more fun band to talk about, even though I enjoy the music of the Beatles a lot more. And so while Final Fantasy VII is my favorite Final Fantasy, I think talking about 14 is in many ways more fun than talking about Final Fantasy VII, if that makes sense. So even though I might prefer, listening to the Beatles more than listening to Kiss, and I might enjoy Final Fantasy VII more than Final Fantasy XIV, I don't know if I could do a vlog series about breaking down Final Fantasy VII in such a way and have it be as interesting and fun as the vlog series I'm doing with 14. So, thank you guys so much for watching every week, for commenting every week. It means the world to me. And, the fact that I'm starting to see regulars, familiar faces in the comments, it really makes me happy. It feels like I'm, really getting to know you guys through the comments and, developing some new friends. Some people are coming to hang out on the Discord. So, again, I really appreciate you guys just coming to hang out with me every week and chat about 14. And so, I just want to say I appreciate you guys, and that's super cool. And I'm really excited to get into these questions. It looks like I've got 6 questions. I have 3 different commenters who left questions, and each of them left 2, so thank you so much. So I haven't prepared my answers, so these are going to be off the cuff to the questions, and I haven't looked at them in a few days, so it'll be, sort of a fresh response to whatever these questions are. So we've got 2. We're going to start with 2 from XIV. And so the first question is, who is your favorite and least favorite character so far? Ooh, that is tough. So my favorite and least favorite character so far. That is really tough. So in terms of my favorite, I think selfishly it's actually Leito. But I think that's because Leito was who I played as in Final Fantasy XI, and it was such a joy bringing him into 14's world. But, that's the War of Light, and I don't know if I want to count that. So I want to say, who is my favorite character outside of the War of Light? I do like Orshifant a lot. I think Moglin is really hilarious. So, and I do like Tataru quite a bit too. So I do have an upper echelon of characters. Trying to think if there's anybody I am neglecting that is hugely important that I'm going to feel like I'm kicking myself for not mentioning. I guess I haven't had that one 14 character that has completely stolen my heart yet. Maybe Orshifant would be the closest to that. So, we'll say Orshifant for now. And least favorite character. Oh man, who is just someone who just bothered me? You know what? I'll say Ascian Prime because of how much I disliked that boss battle. And I thought that the execution of the Ascians at the end of the storyline was pretty weak. So I'll say Ascian Prime is my least favorite character so far. And next question from XIV. What predictions do you have for where Stormblood and the rest of the story is going to go? So I have in the past watched 14 reviews and listened to 14 podcasts that friends have done as they were playing through 14, and they did discuss story spoilers in those reviews and podcasts. But it's been years since I've watched or listened to those, and so I remember like a couple plot points, but not enough where like I won't still be surprised by the story. So, for example, in Stormblood, I do know there is a character who like has memory loss at some point. So starts off as a bad person, then has memory loss and becomes a good person, and then they eventually die. So I know that spoiler for Stormblood, and I know that Ida gets unmasked in Stormblood and is from Doma or something, and that's kind of a big deal, and she has a different name. So I know spoilers like that for Stormblood. But otherwise, I'm pretty much completely in the dark about the story and don't really remember anything else. So that's kind of how the rest of 14 is with me, where I know like a couple plot points, but I don't know the overarching, where everything is ultimately going to end up. I don't know every single plot point. I know I'll find Golbez in the patch quest for Endwalker, for example, but do I know what happens in Endwalker? Not in particular. So as far as the predictions, I'm saying that as a caveat. So if I nail it too much, then you can say, oh, he knew that and he's cheating. So trying to be as fair and as upfront as possible, because I'm a guy who doesn't mind spoilers, but I'm not actively looking up 14 spoilers either. It's more just if a spoiler comes my way, I'm not going to freak out about it. But as far as my predictions for where Stormblood and the rest of the story is going to go, I would guess. So I know it's going to be in Doma, I believe. And so I'm guessing there's going to be a greater integration of Ugiri into the plot. And I'm guessing we're going to be addressing the Doman refugee crisis a bit more. As far as like what specific things are going to happen in Stormblood, I mean, again, I feel like this is kind of changed just because of the reputation I know Stormblood has. But I feel like Stormblood is going to be a tale that feels isolated from the rest of the expansions and doesn't tie into the overall grand narrative, and is going to feel like a pivot and just really focusing on a regional conflict. But again, that's because that's what I've heard from other people. But what's interesting is that Heavensward kind of was that too. Aside from some sprinklings with the Empire and some stuff with the Ascians, it was mostly self-contained. And the biggest complaints I had with Heavensward, in terms of story, a lot of it was the integration of the Ascians and the integration of the Empire into the plotline, and how it felt like trying to bring back stuff from A Realm Reborn wasn't fitting into the story that Heavensward was telling. And so I'm wondering if, because Heavensward is more self-contained, whether or not I'll have those same issues, and if I'll enjoy it more because it's not going to be awkwardly shoehorning stuff from previous expansions that don't fit. But I do seem to recall hearing that the Empire is much more active in the plot of Stormblood, so yeah, I'm really not answering this question. What predictions do you have for Stormblood, and what predictions do you have for where Stormblood and the rest of the story is going to go? I think that the story is going to come together in Shadowbringers and Endwalker. But yeah, in terms of specific... Alright, try to think, Greg. Specific plot points. Where is the story going? I would say, in terms of Stormblood and the rest of the story, I think we are gradually building up to the Empire's decline. I think that is going to be happening. The Empire is going to be declining, and the Ascians are going to... We're going to have a lot more revealed about the Ascians and their plot, and they're going to cause more significant damage to the world than the Empire. I do think that the Ascians are going to be a threat beyond the Empire, so I think we'll take care of the Empire first. And I think that we're going to be gradually reintroducing the Scions throughout the expansions. But again, that feels like cheating, because you see Thancred in the trailer for Stormblood, and I know that Ida is coming back. Sorry, not in Stormblood, in Shadowbringers, and Ida's, in Stormblood. So, yeah, this is... I'm not answering this question well, I'm sorry. I think that Stormblood is going to be... The main characters are going to take a much more active task in uprooting the Empire's control in Doman society and helping bring about some kind of revolution where the Empire's chains are released from the people of Doma. I think that is where Stormblood is going to focus. It's going to be freeing the Doman people, is I think going to be where Stormblood is going, and I think that is where Shadowbringers will go. including other places where the Empire has allies, while gradually unraveling the Ascians plot. That is where I predict the story is going, and MXL will show up and be like, I am a really well-written villain. Okay, so these next questions are from Radel Girl. As an 11 player, are there any references so far that you really enjoyed in 14? Is there any you hope to see as you continue playing? So it's interesting with the 11 references in 14. Most of the major ones I haven't gotten to yet because of Echoes of Vana'diel, which obviously is what I'm really looking forward to as an 11 player, and just seeing where the story for all of that lands. I do wish that they, in the Echoes of Vana'diel storyline, would reference something beyond the year 2006 in their 11 references, but it looks like it's all pretty much Change of Promathia era and prior. But I understand that's the most popular era of the game, and so like I would love a Duelan reference, but I don't think we're going to see it. But obviously I enjoyed the seasonal event with Iroha. I really enjoyed that Final Fantasy XI seasonal event. That was great. And I love that a lot of the designs, like the goblins and other monsters, are straight up just assets they took from 11 and just reskinned with like higher res models. So I remembered reading somewhere that they actually used straight up Final Fantasy XI assets in the 1.0 build and just made the graphics look better for those 11 assets. And then because that was the design, that just bled over into A Realm Reborn and beyond. So it is fun that just like straight up, just some of the designs are just straight up just the 11 designs, but just like with a fresh coat of paint. So I do enjoy those. But as far as other like references that are explicit to 11, there haven't really been too many that are really blatant that I've encountered. But if I had to pick a single 11 reference, that's probably my favorite. Other than the straight up 11 crossover, I'd say I like the Goblin design. I like that a lot. Alright, next question from Radel Girl. Do you have any theories on what caused the conflict between Hydaelyn and Zodiark and what the Ascians hope to achieve? So the good news is I do not remember the spoilers for this in my 14 reviews that I've watched. So, what caused the conflict between Hydaelyn and Zodiark? So in 11, the gods of that world were sort of like a yin and yang. There was the goddess Altana and the god Promathia. And so so if there was to be an 11 parallel between Zodiark and Hydaelyn and Promathia and Altana, it would be sort of the goddess Altana would be the goddess Hydaelyn, and the god Promathia would be the god Zodiark. One would be sort of like a peaceful, loving goddess of light, then a god of darkness and like violence and strife. So I do wonder if they would do something that direct of a parallel between the two games. That's kind of like the vibe I have just from what I've experienced. Maybe they were at one point a single entity, like a creature of duality and balance that got split into two and then maybe needs to be reunited. But I do think that the Ascians, especially with the Warrior of Darkness reveal, are trying to bring the world back to a state of darkness because the light has become too powerful and trying to balance out the light and darkness. So I'm guessing they're hoping to bring about what they view as balance, but is probably ultimately an imbalance of darkness. And then we've got Deozen Finn. 2 questions wrapped into one. What has been the greatest positive surprise you've had in 14 so far? And what has been the greatest disappointment so far? So, it's hard to say, what is a surprise versus something that just made me very happy. So I'm not surprised that the 14 community has been really great and welcoming and kind, but that is something I just really, really love. Just how nice all the players have been when asking for help, how great everyone's been in the comments. I just love the vibe of the 14 community, just really, really positive, and so that wasn't necessarily a surprise because I heard that from so many people. Maybe Matoria's Cave would be the biggest surprise in terms of how much I loved it and how well that hit. Where, you think, okay, whatever, it's going to be an FF1 reference, that's cool, I guess. But I wasn't expecting it to just, pierce my soul in such a way. So maybe that would be my greatest positive surprise I've had in 14 so far. And greatest disappointment so far. That it's tough to think what the biggest disappointment so far is, because there's a lot of things in 14 that frustrate me. I think a lot of the game mechanics I'm still a bit mixed on. I still don't like the queues for dungeons, but I mean they've largely fixed that with the trusts. So a lot of the complaints I had in my Final Fantasy ranking series videos that I made where I discussed 14, I don't really have anymore. So as far as my biggest disappointment, I think that, changes based upon where I was at in the game. So previously it might have been waiting for dungeons to progress the story, which was something back when I played A Realm Reborn, they didn't have trusts for the A Realm Reborn dungeons. So that was something that was really annoying. That was probably my biggest disappointment in 14 was that. But now that that's no longer an issue, overall I'm still pretty positive, so maybe just some of the storytelling flaws I mentioned in my last vlog, I think are probably my biggest disappointment, just because the game was just on such a high that stooping down to a 7 out of 10 on the storytelling is it's still good, but it's oh man, that's a bummer. We were just knocking out of the park, home run after home run. And I will say that I think 14 still struggles with pacing in a lot of ways, so when you get to the end of a Final Fantasy game, typically, it feels like everything is building up to this big battle, and just the tension keeps building and building and building and building. And then we're going to do that final dungeon, and it's going to be epic, and it's going to be intense, and we're going to take care of the bad guy. And you just feel this gradual build. And it felt like in Heavensward, we would keep building the tension and building up to that final battle, but then we would go and do something much more mellow and chill, and then go back to building to the final battle, and then go back down to mellow and chill. And I do get that there's an ebb and flow to storytelling, but I feel towards the end of the expansion should have just been build. And it felt like we spent a lot of time in Idyllshire and a lot of time in Matoria's Cave, and that just felt like a much more relaxed atmosphere when we had really urgent, pressing matters to deal with. I do understand RPGs, okay, no, you gotta do this, you do all the side quests before the final boss. I get that. But I think in terms of it being part of the main scenario, it just felt like we brought the energy down way too much right before going right back to the high tension. And so I don't know if it's the biggest disappointment for me, because I like that section a lot, but I would have maybe preferred it earlier in the expansion and then just building to that epic finale. I think I would have preferred that if they had somehow just moved the stuff around. But again, that's not a disappointment. It's more just I would have preferred that. I don't really feel like I have too big of disappointments other than what I outlined in the last video. Overall, I'm having a great time with 14, loving it. So biggest disappointment is just I wish some of the storytelling had been handled a bit better. And actually, no. Biggest disappointment, one-hit kills. Those are stupid. Those suck. I don't like those. One-hit kills are bad. All right, well, that is the vlog for this week. Next week, we're going to be discussing my adventures with Summoner Jobin, so stick around for that. And hopefully that video essay will be done soon so I can get back into some post-Heavensward content. But again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, everyone.